For just a little context, let me explain to you about the place that I was working at during this encounter. I was probably 18 or so, and I was working at this tiny little convenience store in the middle of a very small town in Kentucky. The store was on this back road in the middle of complete nowhere. The town was probably about 5 miles away, and the only thing nearby were a few factories and some houses. We didn't get that many customers that we didn't recognize. This particular day was no exception. There was just a steady stream of our regulars until this guy came in. He looked pretty out of place right away. He was very, very tall and very thin, looking like he had just stumbled out of some corporate meeting into the Kentucky backwoods. He came in, yanked his sunglasses off, and grabbed a few things before approaching the counter. I was always very polite. I still am. So I struck up the usual scripted conversation with this guy. "Hey, how are you? It's a nice day," etc. At first, he seemed normal enough. He answered my questions politely and asked me a few questions, and then slid into the "Are you married?" It wasn't uncommon for me to get this question or to be hit on in here, and I wasn't put off by it. It was the middle of a beautiful sunny day, and there was another employee running the subway on the other side of the store within sight and hearing range, and this guy had done nothing to suggest that he was especially creepy. I told him I was engaged, and he sort of clicked his tongue. "You may as well give up now. It'll be harder to give up later, and they'll come for you because you're cute." I was a little spooked at this point, but I hesitatingly asked what he meant by that. The other employee was drifting closer now and was definitely paying attention. He told me that I would probably be kidnapped and married within a few years because they were coming. A few prompts had him telling me that he had worked for Roswell for many years and that he was telling me some top secret info. He told me that atomic testing underneath the earth had woken up an ancient race of 50-foot tall aliens. These aliens were actually angels that had fallen from heaven and were placed in a slumber underneath the earth. Since they had awoken, they had quickly departed for space, where they floated above the earth, watching. The world governments, according to this guy, have an agreement with these alien angels. They kept them secret and work with them. He tried to explain how this made sense in relation to NASA and international politics. But it has been several years, and I honestly wasn't following his train of thought at the time, so I can't recall exactly what he said. However, what did stand out to me is that he told me that these alien angels had developed a lust for human women. He said that they would come back to Earth soon and take over, and that when they did, they would enslave the attractive women and take them as wives. The conversation probably lasted for a half an hour to 45 minutes. In all seriousness, the other employee was looking at me like she was about to phone the police, and a few regulars had finally started to drift in toward the end and were staring at him. Once he took off, I was insanely relieved. His intensity and insistence that I believe him was intimidating. I wondered for a long time if it was a joke or if he was mentally ill. I tried researching some of what he had told me to see if it was a basis of some cult or religion or something, but I was never able to turn anything up. Whatever the case was, he certainly had me scared. I've only told this to a couple of people about my experience, and everyone tells me I was just dreaming, but I know it wasn't a dream. I can tell the difference between a dream and a memory. I tear up whenever I think about it or talk about it. I'm tearing up as I write this. I wanted to get counseling to help me cope or try to make sense of it, but I know a regular psychiatrist or therapist wouldn't take me seriously. I've looked into therapy for people that have been abducted, but there just doesn't seem to be any of these types of practices in my area. So I'm going to talk about what happened to me on here. I really don't know what I'll get out of this, but I know that I have to talk about it, and for once, not to be told I was only dreaming by the listener. I was asleep at my boyfriend's parents' apartment, in his room and in his bed, with him right next to me. I remember waking up, laying on my back on a table or a stretcher type thing. There was so much bright white light that I remember not being able to see any detail in the room I was in. My eyes took some time. I'm not sure how much time, maybe just a couple of seconds to adjust. I saw big black eyes. I felt drugged, disoriented. I don't think I was supposed to wake up during this because I felt like I was heavily sedated. I had trouble making out the beings I saw. There was at least 3 of them. All I can remember is big black eyes. All of a sudden, I heard one of them talking to me, but he spoke to me in my head telepathically. He told me exactly this: close your eyes, you will fall asleep. When you wake up, you will be back in bed. For whatever reason, I truly believed this being. I knew I wasn't being lied to. I knew I wasn't going to be hurt, so I obeyed. I closed my eyes as I could feel some kind of injection into my spine. I don't remember how, or if they moved me to do it, or what. I just remember the pressure of the injection and knowing something went into my spine, and then everything went black. I opened my eyes, and it was morning. I was back in my bed with my boyfriend. I reached to touch and feel the area on my back where I was injected, and it was sore. And for the next couple of weeks, I could feel the soreness when I would bend over and touch the area. My son was born a few months later. After having an epidural while giving birth, I can say that whatever the beings did to me felt very similar to the epidural I had in the hospital when my son was being born. My son is now 7 years old. He's perfect, he's smart, well-behaved, and so sweet and caring. He's such an awesome kid. But the thing is, I am now pregnant again, another boy. I am being induced in 2 days, and I have been scared the entire pregnancy that I would be taken again. I believe that I have gotten through this entire pregnancy without a visit from the beings that took me years ago. I mean, at least I think I have. If they had paid me another visit already, I don't remember, or did not wake up during the encounter this time. So I guess if they did come for me again, at least I don't remember it. Maybe they didn't take me again. Maybe it was just one time. Who knows? At least I know that they didn't harm me or my baby. I can find some peace in that. I don't know how to explain how I know they didn't cause harm to me or my babies. I guess I just know. When the one being told me telepathically to close my eyes and go back to sleep, I felt calm, at peace, dare I say, safe. In that moment, I felt trust, and I knew I wasn't going to be harmed, and my baby was not going to be harmed either. It was still a scary experience, though, and it's definitely one that I do not want to encounter again. Back in the spring of 2012, I went through a few weeks where I just traveled around Central Texas and camped at whatever I was closest to come dinner time. One night, I ended up really close to Enchanted Rock, a nifty little mountain near Fredericksburg. I like to sleep under the stairs when the weather is nice, and it was in the 70s that evening. Perfect for it. I went up to the mountain about a quarter of the way up and broke away from the trail to find an okay spot for my tarp and bedroll. After sitting up, cooking a light meal and eating, I laid down for the night. As I was drifting off, I heard a whining, almost like a helicopter from a ways off. I didn't think much of it till a light cast itself along the trail a couple 100 feet away. I bolted up, slipped on my boots, and ran to the nearest tree. The light searched around for a while, never really coming close to my camp or me. Then got really high-pitched, and then a circle of 6 yellow lights came to life above the mountain and flew off to the west. I got back to my camp, packed up, and slept in my truck bed with the cover closed. Another time around the same time period, but near the end of my adventure streak, I was at Lake Whitney at one of the dam-side parks. It had been raining all day, and everything was absolutely miserable. Sometime before dark, the rain let up and I was able to set up my tent. Given the overall misery of the night, I didn't feel like cooking, so I had an MRE in my tent. After I sealed up my tent and snapped the door closed, I went to bed. During the night, I had an awful bout of sleep paralysis. The insides of my tent got huge, and it was lit up with a bright light. Around me were 4 alien-looking things. I didn't feel threatened or anything. I was just kind of there. After some time of me telling myself to get up, I woke up. My boots were covered in fresh mud, but my tent was still sealed. My mummy bag was still wrapped up tight, so I ruled out me going to pee sometime. Once I got out of my sleeping bag, I stepped outside and took a look around. The ground around me was completely dry. There were no footprints and no mud tracked to my tent from anywhere else around me. Still not sure how my boots got caked in the mud the night before, or why my campsite was the only dry one.